The year is 39 AD, and the air inside the Imperial dining hall is thick with the scent of roasted peacock, unwashed fear, and a silence so heavy it feels like it crushed your ribs. You are a Roman senator, a man who commands legions and governs provinces. Yet right now, your knuckles are turning white as you grip the edge of the table, your fingernails digging into the wood until they bleed. You are watching the most powerful man on earth, Emperor Caligula, slowly lead your wife out of the room, his hand clamped possessively over her wrist. You cannot scream. You cannot stand. You cannot even look away. Beside you, 50 other aristocrats stare blindly into their wine cups, the liquid trembling in their hands, praying to gods they no longer believe in that she won't say anything that gets you all executed before dessert is served. 20 minutes pass, but in the suffocating quiet of that hall, it feels like 20 lifetimes. When the emperor finally returns, he doesn't just shove her back to your side. He reclines on his couch, pours a goblet of vintage Falernian wine, and with a smile that doesn't reach his dead cold eyes, he begins to critique her performance. He describes the intimacy in graphic, clinical detail, comparing her body to the other wives in the room, rating her like livestock at a market. And you have to smile. You have to nod. You have to thank him for the honor, because the alternative is watching your children be butchered in the street. This wasn't just madness. This was a mechanism, a perfectly tuned engine of psychological dismantling designed to strip the human soul of its dignity. The architect of this nightmare learned his trade by watching his own family be systematically erased by the previous regime. His name was Caligula, and what he inflicted upon Rome was so vividly disturbing, so surgically cruel, that 2,000 years later, historians are still peeling back the layers of trauma to understand how one young man could weaponize the entire Roman state against its own people. If you believe that the darkest chapters of human history must be preserved as a warning for the future, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us exhume the buried truths of the ancient world. Now, let's step back into the shadows of the Palatine Hill, because to understand a monster, you must first witness the making of him. And be warned, the story you are about to hear descends into a darkness from which some never return. Before we can dissect the 5 acts of Caligula's reign of terror, we must understand that monsters are rarely born. They are manufactured piece by broken piece. The assembly line for Caligula's psyche began when he was just a child. Picture the scene. The year is 14 AD. The air smells of wood smoke, damp wool, and the metallic tang of sharpened iron. A little boy, barely 7 years old, is sprinting through the mud of a Roman military camp on the Germanic frontier. He isn't wearing a toga. He is dressed in a miniature legionnaire's uniform, complete with a tiny breastplate and little red leather boots. The soldiers, grizzled veterans who have slaughtered barbarians and conquered nations, roar with laughter as the boy runs past. They scoop him up, toss him into the air, calling him their mascot, their little boots, or in Latin, Caligula. He is the son of Germanicus, the golden boy of Rome, a general so beloved that men would gladly die for him. To this child, the world is a place of adoration and invincibility, surrounded by the protective wall of the empire's deadliest army. He believes he is safe. He has no concept that the shadow is already creeping toward him. Just 1 year later, the golden age turns to ash. His father, the great Germanicus, falls ill in Syria. The official reports claim a sudden sickness, but the whispers in the dark corners of the forum tell a different story. Poison ordered by a jealous rival, or perhaps by Emperor Tiberius himself. At 8 years old, Caligula watches his world dissolve. The machine that will one day consume Rome first consumes his family. He watches his mother is dragged from their home, accused of treason, her dignity stripped away before she is exiled to die of starvation. He watches his oldest brother arrested, imprisoned in a dungeon so vile that he is eventually driven to eat the stuffing of his own mattress in a desperate attempt to survive. He watches his second brother exiled to a rock in the Mediterranean, where the guards torture him so relentlessly that he finally smashes his own skull against the stone walls just to make the pain stop. One by one, the lights go out. By the time Caligula is 19, he is the sole survivor, a lonely ghost walking through a graveyard of memories. And then the summons arrives. Emperor Tiberius, the man responsible for the destruction of his entire bloodline. wants to see him. The destination is Capri, a jagged island rising out of the Tyrrhenian Sea like a fortress of solitude. Tiberius has retreated here, turning the island into a private playground of depravity, far from the prying eyes of the Senate. Ancient historians like Suetonius and Tacitus describe Capri as a house of horrors, a place where the old emperor, paranoid and rotting with disease, indulges in lust so twisted they defy description. Into this viper's nest walks the teenage Caligula. He is walking on a knife's edge. He knows Tiberius murdered his family. Tiberius knows that he knows. But Caligula realizes that one slip, one tear shed for his mother, one flash of anger for his brothers, will result in his immediate execution. So, he fractures his own mind. He buries his humanity deep in a vault where no one can see it. He becomes a perfect actor. Suetonius writes a chilling observation of this period. There never was a better servant or a worse master. For 6 agonizing years, Caligula smiles at the man who killed his parents. He laughs at the emperor's jokes. He suppresses every natural instinct until his soul is as cold and hard as the cliffs of Capri. Then, in 37 AD, the old monster finally dies. Some say his heart gave out. Others whisper that Caligula, seeing his chance, smothered the old man with a pillow as he slept. It doesn't matter how it happened. The 19-year-old hostage is suddenly the master of the known world. Rome erupts in joy. They think they are crowning the son of the beloved Germanicus, a hero returned to save them. They have no idea that they have just handed absolute power to a man who spent his formative years in a finishing school for sociopaths. For the first 7 months, the illusion holds. The young emperor seems just and kind, but then a fever strikes him. He falls into a coma, hovering between life and death while the empire holds its breath. When he wakes up, the man who went asleep is gone. Something in the fever burned away the last remnants of his restraint. The mask falls off, and the machine begins to whir. What follows is not the random flailing of a madman, as Hollywood often depicts. It is a calculated dismantling of Roman society, separated into 5 distinct acts of psychological warfare. Act 1, the sister goddess. Caligula had 3 sisters, but Drusilla was his obsession. The ancient sources are rife with rumors of a relationship that crossed the sacred boundaries of siblings, claiming they lived as husband and wife. Whether these accounts are factual or merely the scandalous propaganda of his enemies is debated, but what matters is that Caligula wanted Rome to believe it. He reveled in the shock, but then tragedy struck. Drusilla died. In his grief, Caligula didn't just weep, he weaponized his mourning. He forced the Senate to declare her a goddess, a deity to be worshipped in temples he commissioned. But he went further. He declared a mandatory period of public mourning that was legally binding. It became a capital crime to laugh. It became a capital crime to bathe. It became a capital crime to dine with your family. Imagine the psychological toll. A mother hushing her giggling child, terrified that a neighbor might hear and report them. A father afraid to wash the dirt from his face, lest he be accused of disrespecting the emperor's grief. For weeks, Caligula turned his internal agony into a state-sanctioned prison for millions. He realized then that he could legislate emotion, that he could force the entire world to feel exactly what he wanted them to feel. Once he understood that reality was just a mold, he initiated Act 2, the Imperial brothel. This is a chapter of history so bizarre that it strains credulity, yet appears in the records as a testament to his desire to humiliate the elite. Caligula opened a brothel right inside the imperial palace. But this was not a place of pleasure. It was a theater of shame. He did not staff it with common workers. He forced the wives and children of Rome's highest nobility, the senators, the generals, the consuls, to work as prostitutes. He sent heralds into the forum to announce the prices, shouting out the rates for a night with a senator's daughter or a general's wife. And the cruelest detail? He kept a ledger, a bureaucratic record of every transaction, every name, every act of degradation. This was a direct attack on the core of Roman identity. Dignitas, for a Roman aristocrat. Family honor was more valuable than gold. By forcing their families into the squalor and recording it in official state books, Caligula wasn't just abusing their bodies. He was incinerating their legacies. He was showing them that their centuries of lineage meant nothing compared to his whim. They were powerless, and he had the receipts to prove it. But public humiliation was too broad for Caligula's specific tastes. He needed to look into the eyes of his victims. This brings us to Act 3, the Banquet of Predation. We return to that dining hall. The scene is set with opulent luxury, golden platters, exotic dancers, wine from the finest vineyards. But the atmosphere is radioactive. Caligula rises from his couch. The room goes silent instantly. The musicians stop playing. He walks slowly among the tables, his eyes scanning the terrified guests. He acts like a buyer at a slave auction, lifting the chin of Senator's wife, inspecting her teeth, running his hands over her silhouette while her husband sits feet away, paralyzed. He takes who he wants when he wants. And when he returns to the table, the true torture begins, the verbal dissection. He forces a husband to listen to the graphic details, to nod, to agree. He breaks the social contract that holds civilization together. By forcing these powerful men to be complicit in their own humiliation, he strips them of their masculinity and their authority. He turns the Senate of Rome into a gathering of broken, trembling cowards who hate themselves almost as much as they hate him. Yet, even this was not the bottom. There's a bond in nature stronger than marriage, stronger than honor, the bond between a parent and a child. Caligula knew this, and he decided to break that too. Act 4, the grieving father. During his reign, executions became a form of sport. He killed for boredom, for annoyance, for the sheer spectacle of death. But Caligula introduced a new protocol that chills the blood. If he ordered the execution of a son, he mandated that the father must watch, not from the back of the crowd, but from the front row. He wanted the father to see the light leave his child's eyes. And immediately after the execution, while the blood was still staining the sand, Caligula would summon the father to the palace for dinner. The historian Suetonius records a specific instance of this that defines the depth of Caligula's sadism. The father is seated at the emperor's right hand. The body of his son is barely cold. Caligula leans in, offering him food, pouring him wine, cracking jokes and just staring into the man's face. He is looking for a crack. He is waiting for a tear, a quiver of the lip, a shadowed look of grief. Why? Because if the father shows sorrow, it means he hasn't been completely broken yet. It means there is still a human spark left to extinguish. If the father cries, he dies. So the man sits there, chewing meat that tastes like ash, laughing at the jokes of his son's murderer, terrified that his facial muscles will betray his broken heart. Caligula turned love into a weapon. He made connection dangerous. He taught Rome that the only way to survive was to feel absolutely nothing. But monsters, for all their cunning, often possess a fatal arrogance. Caligula became so convinced of his godhood, so certain that fear was an unbreakable chain, that he forgot the cardinal rule of the predator: never back a killer into a corner. He had spent years breaking politicians, men of words and compromise. But in Act 5, the wrong man, he turned his sights on a soldier. Cassius Dio was a senior officer in the Praetorian Guard, the elite unit sworn to protect the emperor's life with their own. Dio was a battle-hardened killer, a man who had waded through blood for the empire, but he had a high-pitched voice. Caligula found this hilarious. He couldn't let it go. Every day, when Dio approached the throne to ask for the daily watchword, a sacred military protocol, Caligula would give him words that were sexually explicit or effeminate. Venus, Priapus. He would dangle his hand to be kissed in an obscene gesture, smirking while the other soldiers suppressed their giggles. For Caligula, it was a passing amusement. For Dio, it was a daily injection of poison. Caligula failed to realize that while a senator might endure humiliation to save his estate, a soldier's currency is respect. By stripping Dio of his dignity in front of his troops, Caligula wasn't just bullying him. He was signing his own death warrant. He was sharpening the very blade that guarded his throat. The inevitable explosion occurred on January 24th, 41 AD. It was a day of games and theater. Caligula was in high spirits, surrounded by sycophants, feeling invincible. Around midday, he decided to leave the games and head to the palace for a bath and lunch. He chose a shortcut, a narrow, dimly lit underground corridor known as a cryptoporticus. The walls were rough stone, the air cool and damp. It was a choke point. As Caligula moved through the shadows, Cassius Dio stepped out to meet him. It looked like a routine security check. Cheria asked for the password. Caligula, arrogant to the last second, sneered and gave a mocking, obscene reply. It was the last word he would ever speak. Cheria roared, "Take this," and drove his gladius upward, slamming the steel deep under Caligula's ribs. The emperor stumbled, gasping, shock flooding his eyes. He tried to run, but the corridor was a trap. Other conspirators surged from the darkness, their daggers flashing in the torchlight. They descended on him like a pack of wolves. 30 times the blades rose and fell. They didn't just want to kill him. They wanted to erase him. 30 stab wounds for 4 years of terror. Caligula, the man who thought he was a god, died screaming in the dirt, alone and terrified. But the machine Caligula built didn't stop with his last breath. Violence is a contagion, and it spread instantly. The conspirators, fueled by adrenaline and bloodlust, rushed into the palace. They found Suetonius, Caligula's wife. She knew it was over. She reportedly offered her neck to the assassins, weeping, and they cut her down without hesitation. Then they found the nursery. Julia Drusilla, Caligula's daughter, was barely a toddler, maybe 2 years old. She was innocent of her father's crimes. But to the assassins, she was a loose end, a seed of the monster. In a moment of brutality that stains the pages of history, a soldier grabbed the child by her feet and swung her headfirst into a marble wall, extinguishing her life instantly. They killed a baby to ensure the nightmare couldn't grow back. For a brief, flickering moment that afternoon, it seemed like Rome might change. The Senate gathered in the Temple of Jupiter, frantically debating the restoration of the Republic. Liberty was on the table. They spoke of freedom, of ending the tyranny of Caesars forever. But while the politicians talked, the Praetorian Guard was looting the palace. In the chaos, a soldier noticed a pair of feet sticking out from behind a heavy velvet curtain. He pulled the fabric back and found a trembling, middle-aged man cowering in the shadows. It was Claudius, Caligula's uncle. He was a family embarrassment. Crippled, stuttering, considered a fool by the court. He expected to be murdered. Instead, the soldier looked at him and didn't see a fool. He saw a payday. He saw a puppet. The soldiers hoisted Claudius onto their shoulders and proclaimed him emperor. The Senate's debate meant nothing. The army had spoken. The system had survived. It is haunting to realize that Caligula ruled for less than 4 years. In the grand timeline of Rome, it is a blink of an eye. Yet, we are still obsessed with him. Why? Because Caligula proved a terrifying truth about the nature of power. He demonstrated that the machinery of the state, the laws, the bureaucracy, the military, the economy, can be weaponized by a single individual to wage psychological war on the population. He didn't break the law. He was the law. The ledgers in the brothel were bureaucracy functioning as designed. The forced mourning was law enforcement doing its job. The executions were state-sanctioned justice. Even after he was butchered in that dark tunnel, the machine didn't break. It just waited for a new operator. The blueprint he left behind, the use of spectacle, fear, and humiliation to control the masses, was picked up by Nero, by Domitian, by Commodus. The scary part isn't that Caligula was a monster. The scary part is that the system he optimized outlived him. After Claudius took the throne, he ordered Caligula's records destroyed. The ledgers, the journals, the letters, all burned. What we know today comes from fragments and memories written down decades later. Which begs a final, chilling question. If the stories of the brothels, the incest, and the torture are just what survived the purge, imagine what was in the documents they decided had to be erased from history forever. Please like and subscribe my YouTube channel History Quest Archives for more video.